It is the Anfield Wrap. Coming up, we've got Paul Duhaney talking about his honorary doctorate, of which we're all very, very proud indeed. But before then, something else we're very, very proud of. I've got Ian Salmon, Ian Ryan, Shaun O'Donnell, the famous Manchester United 0, Liverpool 3, Ian Ryan, better players, better plan, better manager, better fitness, better work rate, better technique. There was only one winner.
Only one winner, yeah, and that's how it plays out. I thought it was a great performance, pretty much from start to finish. And I think, it's easy to take these kind of things for granted, but it's been referenced before on other shows. Liverpool, in their absolute pomp in the 80s, they play Manchester United 20 times and they win twice. And back then, they're probably the best team on the planet. So it's not an easy thing to go there and win or just beat them at any time because, the history of the fixture, the pressure, the stress, and maybe you see a little bit of that last season where maybe it did just become a little bit too pressured and a little bit too stressful. And then when things don't go your way, you can see a scenario where the other team, albeit a team that's weaker, gets back into a game of football, especially with the crowd as well. And by all accounts, their crowd wasn't great yesterday. It felt quite quiet in terms of what was coming through the TV. But Liverpool were magnificent. And in terms of, we'll probably come on to it, but Neil, there were so many standout performances. Listening to some of the post-match stuff last night, I think there's genuine cases for 3, 4, 5 man of the matches. That's how good it was. So absolutely superb.
The idea, Shaun, just to be, absolutely nail this one down, I think it's worth pointing out to Ian's point, in the 80s, Liverpool could well be the best team on the planet. Across the whole decade, they do only win there twice. For me, the flip side is, there was a period of time where Manchester United had an argument that they could be the best team on the planet. And I would say, with the exception maybe of 1-4-0 at Old Trafford, they never embarrassed us. We were always battling performances. We're humiliating these on a pretty regular basis. I thought yesterday was really quite humiliating for Manchester United, everyone connected to them, including the cheerleaders in the media.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I was actually thinking that myself yesterday in the ground. We're lucky enough to have a few of these in recent memory. And there's certainly no humiliations on our side in recent memory that I can think of or that come to mind, even as you say, in sort of United's pomp. And I think that there's a few reasons for that. I think, if you think about Anfield, we would never let that happen. I think it is what I took away from it. Like, standing in the away end yesterday, seeing them almost just give up, I thought, even at 2-0 down, I'm not sure we'd completely give up. I think there'd always be something. And I watched all the post-match stuff on Sky when I got in last night, and Keane was saying, when a game's dead on 50, 60 minutes, you need to be really worried if you're Manchester United. And I think that nobody's worrying enough about them. Like, it really is. It's a sorry state of affairs. And obviously it's great for us. But I think you're right to point out that, we wouldn't let this happen. And I think, talking about the sort of records and what happens, I think there was something significant to seeing yesterday, a stat that slots the first manager since Paisley after Shankly to win his first game at Old Trafford. And I think that's significant.
No, it's longer than that.
Yeah, well the first...
It's sorry, this sounds like I'm correcting you, but he's the first manager since Paisley to win his first game against United.
Okay.
But the first game against United at Old Trafford is something like 1895.
Wow.
It's even more impressive than it sounds in the first place.
Okay, amazing. That's a great correction, thank you. I think the point I was going to make was, I think that shows where we are as a team. Like, this isn't a new manager coming in and rebuilding. This is a step on. And I think Shankly Paisley, I wasn't around then, but by all accounts that was a step on. Yeah. And I think that's what we're sort of hopefully all going to be walking into now.
I'll come back to you on it, Shaun. For me, I'm of the view this was, in a number of ways, it was the same as last season, but the big difference ultimately was there was better composure, better finishing. But I think also it was easier because there was less context. It wasn't a cup quarter-final, and it wasn't a game when you're in the running for the title. And, I think that does make things a little bit easier. It does make things a little bit more straightforward. But in general, though, I think there's more composure and better finishing because I think they're working on being more composed and calmer, and they're working on creating better chances. So I think it's chicken and egg, but I think that you get to see both.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, they've got the lived experience of last season, because it's been well documented. We haven't made many signings. We've made one signing that can come into the team this year. So all of those players have been there, they've experienced it before, and that probably backs up the Old Trafford point, because as much as we know they're the better team last season, and in the stands or TV, whatever you're watching it, it was clear to see there's still that Old Trafford thing. There's still that pressure of, if we don't make it count now, or even in front of goal, all of a sudden you realise it's Old Trafford. I was thinking as well, Old Trafford is probably bigger for overseas players than it is arguably for some of our local players or English players, because it's such a global event. It's the thing that it's the most watched sporting event in the world. It's the thing that gets spoken about most, like, outside of the UK. As Scousers, we often say, we all say Everton's our biggest game, Everton's our biggest rival. It often gets referred to as a derby. Salah called it a derby, and I'm like, it's not really a derby, you know what I mean? But I feel like that all plays into what happened last season, whereby your legs get heavier. All of a sudden, it just feels like a much bigger thing than potentially what it should be. And I think yesterday we corrected everything from last season.
They correct everything from last season. I think the other thing, Ian, is I think they show the team, not the occasion, and not the idea of 75,000 Mancunians, and not the idea of a worldwide audience. But I thought they showed the team they were playing the requisite amount of respect, i.e. they treated them like, you aren't very good, ultimately. We're better than you.
It's about time. I mean, we should have gone and treated them with disdain last year, and I think obviously last year we became complacent within the game, but as Shaun was just saying, that the players have got the lived experience of that, but they've also got the lived experience of going there and winning 5-0. And they've got the lived experience of beating them 7-0 at our place. They know what they can do to Man United. And just as a sidebar, I've only been to United once in the league, and it was that 4-0 game. It wasn't a fun day out, and I was in the Man United director's box, which made it even worse. Long story, but painful day out. I left on 3. By the second they knew I was a Scouser. By the third, I was out of the ground. And the fact that we've gone through that's the only time they've embarrassed us. We've got 3 embarrassments on basically in 2 years now. We've really humiliated them. And the weird thing for me yesterday was Matty came in from town about 25 minutes in, asked what's the game like. So it's quite even at the moment. So in fairness, I think this is the best version of Man United I've seen in quite a few years. And at that point, it was. And within 30 seconds, it wasn't anymore. It stopped being that. It just went back to last season.
On the disallowed goal, Ian, in that context, sometimes disallowed goals can, I think, do you in. I think that one, the way in which it went, I think they have a little flurry after then, but I actually think it gave Liverpool a bit of a boost to put a bit of a spring in Liverpool's step. But I think it also said to Manchester United, these can create really good chances against us. I thought they got more concerned after the disallowed goal. Yeah,
because generally, my concern when the goal was disallowed was that it gives the fans that boost. So it gives the entire ground that we just got away with that. We know that we should be 1-0 down, but we've got away with it because of a millimetre of a touch from Salah. But it told both teams we could get in behind them. It told them that we could do this, and it told us we could do it again, and therefore we went on to do it. It's the point I was going to go for a second ago. The thing for me is, and I don't know if we're going to go on to this, but when people talk about Manchester United, we talk about the size of the occasion and the size of the global reach, and we talked about it on the preview show on Friday, and that the global reach now is the most watched thing. When people talk about Man United, they talk about Alex Ferguson's Man United. It's not Man United. Man United, having lived through the 70s and 80s, my reason for hating Man United is I lived through the 70s and 80s when we were winning everything you could possibly win. And the media talked about Man United like they were still the glorious team of the 60s. And they weren't. They were a shit team with a succession of really, really bad managers. And now they're a shit team with a succession of really, really bad managers again. They've basically reverted to the type of 70s and 80s. They've only ever been good under 2 managers. And that's Busby and Ferguson. And that is all they've been. Other than that, they are not our business at all. And they've come back to ceasing to be our business again.
I couldn't agree more with that, Ian. I think it's worth saying, I'll say it again, better plan, better manager, better fitness, better work rate. But I also said better players, better technique. When the team sheets come in, I'm not saying that there aren't good players playing for Manchester United, but before a ball's kicked yesterday, and by the time we get to the final whistle, I wouldn't have a single Man United player in our first 11. I like Dano. I think he's got something about him, and I think he could go somewhere and be a really, really good fullback. But I'd rather have either of our fullbacks. Maino is at the start of a career that could be glittering, but he's very much still at the start of it. He looks raw in a number of different facets. I've liked Rashford, but he has been a hugely inconsistent footballer for many a year. I think Zirkzee could have a lot to recommend him. I haven't seen him yesterday. He's involved in players, link-up plays good, but you wouldn't pick him ahead of Diogo Jota. No. You just go through it, Ian, and that's why as soon as those team sheets dropped, I was very confident about the game. Almost just trying to play it down last week. I kept saying to everyone, this doesn't matter. If they beat us, it's because something mad's happened, because there's been some sort of weird Old Trafford thing. That's the only reason they beat us, and then nothing weird happens, and we're more than 3-0 better than them because we've got better players in every single department.
Yeah, and that's a big difference from maybe the time we were alluding to before in the 80s, because even back then, you'd still say that even though they win a great side, they had good players.
Yeah,
Brian Robson, they had Paul McGrath, Norman Whiteside, Brian Robson, as you say, Mark Hughes, Strachan, people like that. You could have a debate about, in terms of who was better, them or their kind of counterpart playing for Liverpool, because they were recognised as really, really good footballers. It's not like that now. It's a million miles away from that now. And we think about where our team is, and 7 of the lads who feature yesterday, who start playing that 5-0 game in 2021. So there's muscle memory there. They understand what it takes to go to Old Trafford and do the business. The back five's the same. Jota plays, Salah plays. And in Mohamed Salah, you've got someone with a record at that ground that is just absolutely unbelievable. It's unmatched. It's unrivaled. To go there and continue to hit those levels season on season is phenomenal. But I think in terms of this game, I think the manager deserves so much credit, because I think the media have been dying to get something out of him, probably since the summer, but certainly in the build-up to this game, it was give us something, give us a soundbite. He's played it with a straight bat. He's gone into this fixture unbelievably calm. And even before the game yesterday, they're like, it's a big game, this, He's like, is it? Yeah. Well, I've not experienced it. I've not lived it yet. So to me, it's just another game of football. And I think when you've got a manager who's as calm as that and as chilled as that, I think that's bound to rub off on the players a little bit in terms of mentality. And Liverpool as a team, they've looked pretty calm and collected since the start of the season. But I think you see that again. There was no panic. Disallowed goal, goes against you. Yeah, it's offside. But you can't let that get to you, especially when you've been to a ground like that before and things have got away from you. But absolutely not. They just continue doing what they're doing. And it was a consummate performance. I think the manager drives it. But then there's so many standouts. I'm sure we will come on to them, as I said before. But it's just, I come away from it so impressed, because you expect to win, but we've gone there before and expected to win. But yesterday we delivered on it.
But even post-match, Ian, I enjoyed him. Just basically his attitude is we're not getting carried away. He at least led on to the supporters. He didn't want to do much more than that, and I'm absolutely fine with it. In fact, I'm delighted. In general, I think it's who he wants to be. He looks to me like he's in his element, but again, he then throws another gauntlet down for them. He says, well, last time you were in the Champions League, the season fell apart. 2 games a week's hard. The midweek games are hard, so we've got to sort that out now. That's the next challenge. And firstly, I couldn't agree more with him. But also, secondly, I do sort of, I think he's got them pegged. They finished 8th last season, and I think they were flattered to finish 8th. Yes, there's a lot of people in the stadium, but we've gone to a mid-table team. I think he's got genuinely, and that was the one thing I wanted. If there was one line I wanted out of him post-match more than anything, was for him to say, bigger challenges to come, i.e. we're going to play better teams than these. He didn't quite go for that little bit, and that would have been the bit that I would have thrown out there, but that's because I made a needle.
He's a bigger man than you.
He is, he's much sounder and much cooler than I am. Yeah, nowhere near as petty. But no, I genuinely, I was like, no, we shouldn't get carried away, because they're crap. And, as I say, he didn't say that, but my God, did he suggest it in a number of different ways.
Yeah, I think you posed a question on the press conference extra show where you said it would have been nice if someone had asked him what's different about Man United. Well, he goes into that post-game because Sturridge asks him, and he breaks it down, and he gives everyone a blueprint to say, basically, this is how you tackle Manchester United, because this is what they're doing differently this season compared to what they were doing last season. I thought that was really interesting. I like the way he's also not afraid to name-check players following the game. Now, that might change if you suffer a bad defeat, but he will talk about things players could and should have done better. Maybe it's a Dutch thing where, they can be a little bit more outspoken at times, but he will say things like, Diaz should have been tracking back a little bit more in that instance, or Trent could have done this a little bit better. I think he is clearly someone who absolutely backs himself to the hilt. I think he believes in his coaching methods, and I think he believes in training pitch time, and if he has enough time with them, he'll get more out of them. I think he absolutely believes in that. And I think, for instance, yesterday, if you're a weak manager if you're a weak personality, the easiest thing in the world to do yesterday is leave Trent Alexander-Arnold until the end of the game, because there's been that big hoo-ha the week before. He doesn't do that. I'm the fucking boss. I decide who plays and when you come off and if you start or not. I love that. And Trent will hopefully, I think he started to see the bigger picture. This is about looking after him as a footballer. For the first time in 5 seasons, he doesn't break 30 league games last year. He plays 28. Now, the manager will be aware of that. And if you're going to have a successful season, you want Trent Alexander-Arnold playing somewhere between probably 35 and 38 games, because he's that important, and he can do little bits with Conor Bradley because he's a good footballer. So it's about looking after these footballers, and I think the manager's very aware of that. So from him up to this point, from what we've seen, it couldn't have gone any better. If you're rating him, you'd absolutely say it's been a 10 out of 10 so far. Bigger stuff to come, bigger challenges to come, but he couldn't have started any better.
Can I just address that Trent point? The Brentford game, when he subs Trent on about 70 again, it's very notable that he's making 2 subs, and then the goal goes in, he's like, okay, Trent's coming off as well. Bradley only starts getting ready the second the goal goes in, he's like, yeah, we're changing this now. And it is looking after the lad, and I think Trent understood that more yesterday than he did it last weekend.
Just last little thing in the round before I want to talk about Salah and his contract, Shaun, is just, let's be clear, I feel like it was put to bed by half-time, but it really could have been more comfortable. Szoboszlai, I don't know quite how he thinks he's making that chance better. That, if I was doing the video analysis on that one, that would be my question, is how do you think you're making this a slightly better opportunity, Dominic? What would the goal be in gaping? But it's all right, we all get carried away. But also the keeper does have to make 2 good saves as well at 3-0. And he makes a very, very good save at 1-0 when the ball goes through Van Dijk's legs. You know, it's technically, it's unbelievable that in the ground you just sort of look past it because it looks like it's right at him, but that he gets his hands where he does is absolutely brilliant. First and foremost, we've got a good goalkeeper. That's nice. But also, secondly, though, you know, there's still stuff for the manager to take away. A video to show, work on this, work on this, work on this. Wasn't perfect. And again, they are at best the 8th best team in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And Slot says that after the game, doesn't he, about the needing Alisson for 2 big saves. I think something that I'm really happy about just this season already is the 3 clean sheets in a row. Like, when was the last time we got 3 clean sheets in a row? And you can tell that. You know, me and my mate were at Anfield last week joking that what we could see from Slot in the lowest century is that he's closed the door. So the door in the defence that we just used to have open under Klopp, like at Anfield in particular, where you just get caught on the counter all the time, there's none of that. And even yesterday at Old Trafford, you know, United in recent years, even when we've played well there, they always sort of catch us on the break, or they catch us sort of in a counter attack or something, or out wide. It didn't feel like there was any of that at all. I feel like it got muted a few times again on the post-match stuff on Sky, but like, we look so well coached, and I think that's not to say we weren't well coached on the Jurgen, because I think if anything, you could argue we were really well coached on the Jurgen the other way. But and it's a compliment to the players that they've taken it on so quickly. That to me would suggest that they were well coached last time, because they know how to be well coached and be well coached again. But I just feel like he's just getting so much right, and it's so important to have that, and have that bedrock of not conceding goals, and be able to, you know, identify all our weaknesses from last season, and all of a sudden in what looks like the first 3 games, just not put them to bed, but just almost like get rid of them straight away and give us that platform to build. Like, winning at Old Trafford, it doesn't happen very often, as we touched about before, but when it does happen, there's always that significance. Yes, they are the 8th best team in the league, but mentally,
God, you're generous to them. Yeah. They're the 8th best team in the league.
Yeah. But the emotional upside of winning there, I think that it gives everyone, ourselves included. We don't bounce into here this morning if we've just beat, you know, the 8th best team in the league on paper. You know, they are more than that from an emotional point of view. Yeah. And I think that's what matters, and hopefully that's what will give us the springboard for the season.
I want to move on before we do individual performances, or even sort of area of the pitch performances, Ian. I want to start, though, to talk about Salah. He brings it up post-match. We'll be doing the window as a whole, having a chat about it on Midweek Extra on Thursday. That'll be out on Thursday. Then we're going to do the league-wide state of play for this show next Monday, so that's what's coming up. But I want to talk about his contract situation, but the wider contract situation, because I think the main man's made it live for himself, but I think he's made it live now for everyone, ASAP. First and foremost, I love it when he starts talking, because I think he's clearly an intelligent fella who's really articulate, who's got genuine thoughts. But I also think he is a little bit of a mischief maker, and he knows exactly what he's doing there yesterday. And I'm all for it, by the way, because I'm all for footballers being themselves, and I'm all for one of, if not Liverpool's greatest ever player, getting to be himself. And I'm also all for him getting tied down for another couple of years. I can understand how arguments could be made against it in a couple of different ways, but there must be a way this can be drawn to a conclusion that works for everybody, given the fact that this is not a footballer who is ready to go into semi-retirement, whether it's in Saudi Arabia or the United States. This is a footballer who looks to me primed to give it his best shot at winning it all one more time.
Absolutely. Let's be crystal on this. If any of those three footballers, and we know which three we're talking about, if they want to play for Liverpool Football Club next season, that should happen. That should absolutely happen. And I understand there's different things around contracts and negotiations will have to happen. Salah was a little bit cute yesterday. Doesn't do many interviews, and you can almost imagine thinking, "Well, I'll do this one. I'm up for doing this one," and he can get his point across.
Yeah, he's done the one after Ipswich as well, and I just think. But also, I think he wants to do a bit like I think he wants a leadership role as well. Yeah. I think he loved having the armband in pre-season. Yeah. I think he sees himself as this is my team. It's Virgil's team as well, and it's his team, the new manager. But it's my team. This.
Yeah, absolutely. He is one of the leaders of the team, and I think what is interesting is some of the theories flying around last night post Salah interview, because he makes the point that no one has spoken to him about a contract, and then people were saying, well, does that mean they haven't spoken to his agents or not? But you did get the impression that no one's come to the table at all with an offer, and I find that incredibly hard to believe, given we're talking about one of the best players to ever do it, not only for us, but in terms of the Premier League, he's right up there in terms of the very best that have performed in the English League. He's that good, he really is. And I think I can understand maybe having reservations about giving him a contract that was, say, 5 years long, because I think that's a long time for a footballer. I've seen people last night saying, he'll play till he's 37, 38, 39. That's really hard to say with certainty whether that'll happen or not, because things can happen to footballers' bodies over 3-4 years. And I don't think anyone can sit here and say with absolute certainty, this is what he'll be like in 4 years' time. But you can make a really good educated guess that in 2 years he'll still be performing to a very, very high level based on what we've seen, based on the nick he's in, based in the drive that he's got as a footballer. So I'll be incredibly disappointed if Liverpool can't make something happen and put something in front of him. And if he says, listen, I'm happy to just do 1 year now and then move on, fair enough. But you don't get that impression. You don't get that impression with any of them. I think they all seem up for something in terms of staying beyond this season. And if that is the case, then Liverpool simply have to make it happen. So I hope there's some kind of negotiation where, even if it is a 2-year extension, and maybe we review it, and it, if he performs well in that second year, you can maybe look at a third year. But there's got to be some kind of solution here that sees Mohamed Salah playing football for Liverpool Football Club next season.
He looks like he looks to be loving it in the present tense. Yeah. But I think it's also just so underestimated how much he has loved it in general. Mo Salah is a global superstar, but he becomes a global superstar because of Liverpool Football Club. The two are intertwined. Our glory since 2017 has been his glory, but his glory is our glory. That's the way in which it's gone. And also, just little things like, he scored something like 25 goals against the two Manchester clubs. He loves taking the piss at Old Trafford. He very rarely actually goes into full piss-take mode. And he did a little bit yesterday, He's arguably a bit selfish for the one straight after he scored, because he thinks to himself, I'm just going to bang another against these, because that's what I do. I think, my point here is, Ian, he's about as Liverpoolian as it gets. His kids have grown up in Liverpool. I genuinely see. I do sort of. There'll be a lot of stuff around Trent, because Trent is the hometown boy. He is the scouser in the team and all that sort of stuff. But I look at all three of them, and I think all three of them are Liverpoodlians. I'm not messing around here, and that's the way I feel about Salah. He's loved it, full stop. But he looks like he's loving it now. And for me, this surely just gets sorted out.
It's got to. I completely agree with you. It's the old. It's not where you're from. It's where you're at mentality. Mo is as scout as Kenny. And that's as scout as you can get. That's it. I've said it loads of times. I've got a mate who I've got an argument going on about whether Mo might actually be better than Kenny, and there's too much emotion in that argument for me. I'm too old to have heroes. I'm a 60-year-old man. I don't have heroes anymore. So Mo's not my hero. Kenny's my hero. Kenny will always be my hero. That's the top and bottom of it for everything he's done for this club. Mo has given me more pleasure than any other player that's ever played for Liverpool. Mo is as great a legend as any legend we've ever had. He's 14 goals behind Billy Liddell. He's going to beat Billy Liddell this season.
Oh, Liddell's no longer his business. Liddell's done.
Oh,
do you know what I mean? Liddell's in the bag.
He's keeping his eye on Hunt at the moment.
Well, that's the one I've got my eye on. I've really got my eye on Roger Hunt.
Yeah. He can't get rushy. A couple of years ago, I thought maybe at a stretch he could get rushy, but he's He's intertwined with the club, and he's currently one of the best in this form that he's in. He starts this season, and he's one of the best players in world football. He could well be the best player in world football at this very moment, because these things, obviously Messi's been the best in world football for like decades, but most of them are transient. We had Luis Suarez as the best player in world football for about 3-4 months at his absolute height. Mo's done it a few times, and I think at this moment he could well be the best performing footballer in world football. So to replace a player of that quality is going to cost far more than you will ever pay him over the space of another 2-year contract. So just do the bloody thing. You're not going to get Chiesa maybe in as his long-term replacement, but he's not going to be Mo. You can't replace Mo. Mo is irreplaceable in terms of the player he is and what he does for us. Just stick a piece of paper in front of him with a load of money on it and sign it.
Yeah, no, I think there's a few things that I play there. It was quite an interesting interview, wasn't it, when you watch it? He's
quite terrifying to watch live.
Yeah, well,
but he just says it like everybody already knows it.
Yeah.
Like, you what?
Well, I think there are a few things. I don't think Salah wants to go anywhere. Like he does an interview on Saturday, like as a pre-thing for the match, and he say, "What do you want Liverpool fans to think of?" And he says, "Oh, I want to be the top 2 best ever players, or the best, with Steven Gerrard." So he's not a man who wants to go. You also don't say, "Well, the club haven't spoken to me about a contract." If you want to leave, do you know what I mean? If you're planning on leaving and this is your last season, you probably keep it to yourself. You're probably talking to other people in the background. You probably so for me, it's quite evident that there's loads of things that could have happened. You see how happy Trent is all of a sudden. He's bouncing around doing like kissing the away fans when he gets taken off and all that. Maybe he's that they spoke to Trent this week and he's like, hang on, no one spoke to me. What's going on there? Also, we've just signed someone in his position, so he might be thinking, hang on a minute, I'm still Mo Salah here. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's loads of things at play, and he's got history for it. He's done it in the past, and like from the club's point of view, I'm not sure you can give him any less money. You know what I mean? I don't think that's an option if you're the club, and also if you're Mo Salah, I don't think again if you're the club, like how many places in work just give people pay rises? You've got to go and ask for it, haven't you? Or you've at least got to demonstrate what you're doing. And I think this is just an example of that. This is him saying, "I'm here. No one's spoken to me. Let's set some alarm bells racing, and I don't want to go."
And as Neil said, as you're saying, he's a very intelligent bloke.
Yeah,
he knows exactly what that conversation is.
Yeah, exactly.
Just on the you mentioned Chiesa there, Shaun, and that's looking like potentially an even kind of bigger piece of smart business, in the sense that if it is someone that can just give Salah a break every now and again, and listen, Chiesa will probably want more from his Liverpool career than that, but at the minute he's just had the summer off, Salah, and he's playing once a week and he looks like this. Does that become different if you're suddenly playing Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday? That might then feel a very different challenge for someone who's 32, 33. I'm not saying he can't do it, because everything you've seen would suggest he can, but over a long, hard season, maybe you just see that tail off a little bit towards March, April. You want to keep him fit and firing the whole season, and that's the point, isn't it?
That's it for me, and I think you can say there's no reason why he couldn't do what he's done in the past in September and October, but I want him to be able to do it in March and April when we're in quarterfinals and semi-finals of Europe, when we're going for 90 plus points. That's when you want the very, and that also doesn't do down what Chiesa's contribution could be, because you could be talking here about Chiesa getting, just on the right, never mind anywhere else, 20 odd starts plus then further 20 sub appearances in a universe where Salah's getting 30 odd starts plus 15 sub appearances. There's not that much difference between it.
No,
you see what I mean?
Absolutely. And a penny for Chiesa's thoughts, because he's sitting there yesterday watching that. Diaz has scored 2 goals, Salah's got 2 assists and a goal, and he's like, fucking hell, that's the level, is it? Okay. That's the fucking level, is it? All right. And it is, that is the level we're playing at. You go to one of your biggest rivals and your 2 wide forwards are absolutely amongst the goals, doing the business, and that's what we expect from our forward players. They've got to be hitting those levels in big games across the course of a season.
Well, just on Diaz, Ian, the brace yesterday, 2 goals at Old Trafford. Not many Liverpool players have done that, because they're not all Mo Salah. Mo Salah's done it. Does it a lot, does it for a laugh. But it couldn't be bothered yesterday in the end. Just thought, let someone else have a turn. But Mo Salah has done it. Fernando Torres has done it. Steven Gerrard's done it. But genuinely, Roberto Firmino's done it. But not many Liverpool players have ever done it. And this has been the criticism. This has been the concern. Where's the end product? Can there be more end product? At the minute, if I say he's answering his critics, I mean me. He's answering me. At this point in time, I consider myself well and truly answered, and I'm banging to being answered in this fashion. I was delighted with him yesterday. I actually don't think his all-round game was as good as it's been in the past, but if you're banging 2 goals in, I'm delighted.
No, I think you're fair. I think the first half an hour or so, I saw people posting a few bits and bobs around kind of, ball retention, pass accuracy, duels. He wasn't doing very well in terms of those kind of metrics. He was kind of falling short, but then he pops up with 2 goals. The first one's great, because there's complications there. Szoboszlai jumps up ahead of him. That could go wrong, but it's a really good finish. And the second one is a gorgeous finish. It's just, he caresses it into the back of the net. And listen, I've been on shows like this where I've defended Diaz, but if I'm being really, really honest, his output last season did concern me a little bit. If you think about, I think it was 8 league goals, there wasn't many assists in there, and you're thinking, actually, if you are going to play for this Liverpool team, you are going to need to see a little bit more than that. And that might sound harsh because his overall game was at times brilliant. And there's times last season where he is carrying the forward line and he's having to because there's injuries, and that might have impacted on him a little bit because we were asking a lot of him. But I think if you get Diaz in this kind of mindset, and it was always entirely possible that a different manager is getting him to do different things, asking him to be in different areas, and you've seen so far, he's absolutely loving it. And a brace yesterday was everything he deserved, really.
I've been on loads of shows since probably around about the end of April, beginning of May, where I've been arguing that Diaz is the obvious player that you sell in order to rebuild the forward line because he's 27. He's coming into the last couple of years of his contract. We probably had the peak from him. His outputs, in terms of goals, isn't great, and Anthony Gordon would clearly be an uplift from him. I don't personally believe he listens to anything I say, and I don't believe he's deliberately making me look foolish, but I do look very, very foolish. I thought he was impeccable yesterday. After the first half hour where he was a bit wasteful and he was getting caught out, after that, he's impeccable. He's electric at the moment, and that second goal is it's so gorgeous because that's the only place you're putting it where the goalie can't get it, and the only way you're doing that is by falling over to hit it, and it's perfect. And I was talking to a lad who sits by me at the match last week at half time. He's like, well, Diaz is looking better today. I said, well, his dad hasn't been kidnapped this season, so that's probably a fairly major thing.
It helps.
Yeah. If your family's not being kidnapped, you can probably play with a little bit more freedom. Yeah.
There's a correlation between the two.
Page 200 of Ian Green's book. That
there is, in that opening goal, when I watched it back when I got him last night, and by the way, match 32 was excellent last night.
Yeah.
So often we criticise a lot of other bits of coverage on some Anfield Wrap bits and pieces, but I thought match 32 was absolutely different class, Shaun. But one of the things you see in the build-up to the first goal is when we win it back, as soon as we win it back, and by the way, Gravenberch snaps in to win it back, he sees it's there, but Jota sends the two lads to the back post. He literally turns around and he points to them and says, go to the back post. You're going to go there. And then he says to Salah, he gestures to Salah, back post. And then Jota takes up the position where he occupies 3 defenders. He runs into the space. The 3 defenders are all looking at him. And now we've got 2 of them, and it was as though. And I think Jota's whole performance was so smart in things like this, without ever getting to be particularly demonstrative himself, because the chance didn't fall to him or the pass wasn't played to him when he wanted it to. Just the way he did that, as I say, he just sends them back post and says to Salah, it's back post this.
Yeah, he's a magician, isn't he? I think we're obviously talking about Diaz and Salah because they scored the goals and by all accounts are the heroes, but it's stuff like that in Jota's game where he doesn't really get the credit for it, because I mean, you hear a lot of he's not in the game but then he scores you a goal, brilliant. Well, that is a prime example of him being in the game. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, he's mentally so engaged
and not scoring a goal. So I thought he was brilliant. I thought he went on a few really clever runs. I mean, they were all brilliant, weren't they? I think the interesting thing about the goals, particularly I think the second and the third goal, it looks another example of good coaching, because they're quite similar in the way they just hit it first time and it goes in the bottom corner. I was thinking, have they been told that this goalie's going to not get across quick enough, or something's going to happen there? Because even for Salah in particular on that second one, he doesn't really do that often, does he? He normally at least takes a touch and then sort of tries to get past or something. So, and same with Diaz.
And Salah basically puts it in the same spot as Diaz puts it in.
Yeah, exactly. So forth. That was interesting. But I think that the forward play in general was another thing that impressed me, because again, we've read a lot about control, how it's going to be boring and we're just going to sort of, wear teams out and beat them. Yesterday was far from boring. The attack and play in particular was not boring in the slightest. You spoke before about how it could have been more. It could have been more, and I think the fact that we're still creating these amazing chances whilst having the door closed at the back is really exciting.
The manager pointed at Slot. Salah pointed at Slot after he scores when he was going back to the halfway line. So he had his little moment, and then he had his little moment again that he has where he's like, yeah, I'm boss. But then he pointed at Slot and was so I think they've said
it's that, a coached move.
I think they've said that way and low. See what you get early, low there. See what you get from it in midfield. Ian, Gravenberch looks to the manor born. There's stiffer challenges to come because, we might play a team with an actual fucking midfield at some point. But, it would have been, if it goes wrong yesterday, post-match, we know what everyone's talking about. Rightly or wrongly, it would have come up. It would have been everywhere if it goes wrong yesterday. But it never really looks like going wrong. And if it wasn't for the fact that Diaz is banging in a brace, I'd say you've got one hell of a candidate for man of the match.
Yeah, I think there was probably 3 for me. I think Salah will be in the conversation, Diaz absolutely, and Gravenberch would be the other one. I thought he was outstanding. I thought he was absolutely outstanding. And I think you're right. This was a different challenge. And I take the point. They weren't great in the middle of the park, absolutely. But I think to go there and just play with that level of confidence and that level of assurity, it was superb. And he was playing it was an interesting role he played yesterday because he obviously is deep at times, but with license to go forward as well, and that ability to take it on the turn and drive, it was sensational. The goal that gets disallowed, he plays such an important part in that, where if it does end up counting, you're looking back at his part in that and thinking, fucking hell, that's unbelievable what he's done there. It was such a great performance, and I think, after, you can fall into a bit of a trap here where you're thinking, well, you're making excuses after every game, because after the Ipswich game I was thinking, well, okay, he was very good in that game, but he was coming up against a lot of lads who are pretty much League One Championship level, the journeyman essentially, so you'd expect him to stand out, but then he plays well against Brentford and it's another game ticked off, and then he goes to Old Trafford yesterday with all the kind of things that we know can happen and the pressure that comes with playing there, and it looked like he was born to play on a stage such as that because he was just brilliant. And listen, Liverpool may still look back at this window, I think they might do, and think we should have done another 1 or 2, and it could come back to bite them when you start getting into the kind of the nuts and bolts of 3 games a week, and it might just be a numbers thing in midfield, whereas if you are committing to him as your kind of deepest line or one of them, then maybe they need someone a little bit further forward because he can't play in 2 positions, so it might just be a numbers thing, but at the minute these are the lads we've got. That's done and dusted now. You put it to one side, and his performance yesterday was magnificent.
I think I agree. I think it's very much a numbers thing. I think Zubimendi would have been a fantastic addition to midfield, but I think very quietly, and I've only got a sample of 2 games to see because I saw nothing of the Ipswich game other than the goals. So I've seen 1 game in the flesh, 1 game on the TV. Very quietly, we've done a couple of very different things in the midfield in those 2 games, because in the Brentford game, Gravenberch is very much the deepest midfielder, and McAllister's got more licence to roam, and Szoboszlai's making runs into the gap on the right-hand side of midfield. Most of Szoboszlai's work, especially first half, was done on the left yesterday, and Gravenberch was breaking to the right, and McAllister was pretty much taking the holding role for the majority of it. So we've got 3 very intelligent footballers, and, adds that Harvey Elliott's a very intelligent footballer, Curtis Jones is a very intelligent footballer when they drop in, but I do think numbers-wise, we need 1 more, maybe 2 more, unless Tyler Morton shows himself to be the player we've seen him be, against Real Madrid away a couple of years ago. But I think we've got that idea of the 6, the dedicated 6 is not what we need. So when people were suggesting dedicated 6s who could be the next Mascherano, it's the last thing on earth we need. We need lads who are going to play football. It's not quite the old 1 stays, 1 goes, because I think it's more regimented and more coached than the 1 stays, 1 goes. It's not deciding on the pitch. I think that there's a lot of real intelligence going on in that midfield 3, both in terms of the players and the coaching.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's a numbers thing, because I think that, if it was a numbers thing, I think they would have signed someone. I think they've gone with a view of, we want to sign someone who's going to improve the team, improve the squad, because we've still got Endo there. For all the, it's as if everyone's written him off. He's already left. He's still there. He still plays for Liverpool, and he can still do a job.
And Slot makes a point of talking to him on the pitch afterwards as well.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned Harvey Elliott, Curtis Jones there, arguably 2 of the brightest sparks of the last sort of 18 months from a Liverpool point of view. They haven't really had the sniff yet. And I know Curtis has been injured, so that's slightly different, but that's one thing I'm really excited about, because it's clear in these first 3 games he's gone, right, what's my best 11? I'm going to stick with these lads, I'm going to go for it. He makes the point after the game yesterday. It'll really start once we get into the Champions League, and as you say, he's sort of saying to the players, this is the marker now, you've got to make sure that we can do this 3 times in a week. So I'm actually really, really encouraged and excited by the numbers that we've got, and not just the numbers, the quality, because Curtis Jones, for me, plays his best football in a deeper role. From my point of view, I think he makes us more solid. I think is sort of how clever he is on the ball and his running and stuff makes him perfect for that role. And it's sort of what you see him with Gravenberch. You know, he played in this position for Ajax, but having someone who's not just sort of a number 6 who's going to sweep up and is an actual footballer, I think is really beneficial and will be beneficial to the system.
If you look at his heat map yesterday, there's loads of stuff on that right hand side, as you said there, in that 8 position. So it just kind of backs up the point that he has licence. Just on the kind of numbers thing, I'm not suggesting just go on Salah for the sake of it. He would have had to have been of a certain quality. But I think when he talk about Harvey and Curtis, I understand, because, you know, Harvey will have expected to play more minutes. But when you do suddenly get into that 2-3 games a week, keeping everyone fit and firing, Curtis is a hugely talented footballer, but there's no denying he misses too much football, and that potentially does leave Liverpool a little bit light. And I think, listen, Endo did well at times last season, especially in the Man City game that often gets referenced. He's magnificent that day, but I'm not sure he's got the skill set that would ideally fit into a slot system. I think that's fair to say. He's not quite as comfortable on the ball as some of the others.
Can I just throw a wild shout in there? In amongst all the transfers of kids and all the loaning out for development and Bajcetic going off to Leipzig? Salzburg, in order to build himself up over the next years, become an Orthodox 6. We very deliberately kept Trey Naoni. No talk of him going anywhere.
He only just turned 17.
He has only just turned 17, but we've kept him as a first team squad player, haven't we?
I think just on the
that's why it's a wild shout.
The only thing I'm surprised with Bajcetic, and I think I've got this right because I looked into it and I couldn't see anything to kind of say otherwise. I'm surprised there was no option to call him back in January just in case he has 3 or 4 really strong months and you're thinking, you know what, we could use him now. Second half of the season, let's bring him back because he's played loads of games. He's in a position where he looks fit, he's firing. But that doesn't appear like we've got that option, which surprised me a little bit.
I reckon that's the sort of thing that we could possibly negotiate live. If they've not gone through in the Champions League, and that's the sort of thing we could possibly negotiate live, it wouldn't surprise me, you know what I mean? And we could probably possibly even send another body, if need be, and go from that. But I think it's a really... I think, well, there we are.
Fucking need someone.
What a fucking team player. Just last thing on it, though, Ian, is... One of the things I took from yesterday, though, insofar as I don't think there's loads to take from yesterday because, as I say, I'm so damning of them. But one of the things that I take from yesterday, though, is if we're buying a midfielder, it's got to be that midfielder for us right now would need to be any midfielder that starts for Man United. The midfielder we buy has got to be better than any midfielder that starts for Man United. And that's the level. And that's why I've got a little bit of sympathy. Not tons, because I do think that those players do exist. And, you know, and in the end, I think Liverpool got very hooked on the idea that they had to go and buy someone who played deeper, rather than maybe looked at it further forward and can we rejig? Because, my God, you can see the coach can coach. But there is, for me, I'm just sort of looking at it and just thinking to myself, the key thing to point out, for instance, Maino looks like he's got a lot of gifts. Christ, he's slow. You know, and he's playing too much football at this point, but he's got a lot of gifts, and I think that they could ruin him in the fullness of time, because I think they'll put too much onus on him and too much emphasis on him. But you got Casemiro there being made a show of, not for the first time. You know, you can Ugarte will come in and he'll win some tackles for them and win some duels, but part of the reason why he's not playing for Paris Saint-Germain is he can't pass it properly at the level that's required. My point is, I think the level that's required technically, you can see why it's really high. That's one bit of sympathy I've got. I haven't got much others because I do think that they should have done another couple, but you know, and we'll talk about this on the Thursday show. But I do, you know, I have got sympathy in terms of what it is he's asking of them. He needs technically brilliant footballers.
Yeah, and I think those players exist.
Oh, they do. Yeah.
You know, Zubimendi was an option. They didn't get him. You know, are you telling me there's no others who can do a similar job to him out there of a similar level? I refuse to believe that to be the case. And then if you think about further forward, if you wanted lads who are maybe, you know, let's be fair, it's a ruthless business, and I like Curtis Jones and I like Harvey Elliott, but there's footballers out there who are better than them. If you want to be really kind of ruthless about it, you know, one place for Crystal Palace, he scored yesterday. Eze is better than those footballers. That I don't think you can argue that. And I like Elliott and I like Curtis, but you're talking about a player there who is at the peak of his powers at 25, 26. I want Liverpool to do 2 midfielders, is what I'm saying. Someone who plays a little bit deeper and then a lad who maybe plays a little bit further forward. But listen, we are where we are. On the Man United point, I think they are in danger of really harming Maino, because young footballers, and there's a history of this where you just overplayed them to the point where you break them a little bit. And he's playing alongside Casemiro, and Casemiro's getting a lot of heat. Now, I remember speaking to you on a Friday show, in this first season, he comes in 22, 23. Even towards the end of that season, there was cracks. You could tell he was starting to tire. And that was the season where everyone was raving about him. But you could see towards the end, it just didn't look right. And yesterday, they're throwing a lad on, and listen, it's not my job to be across all of my United's players, but I've never fucking heard of him. And I bet you there's people in that crowd who'd never heard of him. For them to be in that situation, third game, and I know they've signed someone who's going to come in, for them to be throwing him into that felt incredibly unfair as well, because that was a really tough ask of anyone. And I don't know what his level is, but to suddenly go from Casemiro to some young lad who's never kicked the ball in the first team, they've got big problems there.
All right, we're going to talk about the defenders in a minute, and then we're going to get on to where everyone's up to an extent. But before then, I spoke to Paul Duhaney about his honorary doctorate that he got in music from his time, his period in Liverpool, and as part of Africa Oye. Neil Atkinson with Paul Duhaney, who I'm tempted to call Dr. Paul, but we're going to try and avoid that. But we're here to talk about the fact that he did get an honorary doctorate from the University of Liverpool for services to music. That was what they gave it to you for all the work done with Africa Oye. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, and I've come on brand today, and this wasn't even intentional. It's just because, like, literally...
It's because you won't know all the clothes.
Yeah, so if you want to, www.africaoye, if you want to get any merchandise, no, actually really was an accident. Just like when they I first received an email about this in January, dropped in my inbox. And when I read it, I was like, oh no, some poor lad has got the same name as me and they've mixed him up. So I'm going back and forth with the uni of Liverpool saying, look, I really think you've got me mixed up. I've never been to uni.
Yeah.
Didn't really know what honorary degrees were. And then someone said to me, that's an honorary degree. Are you crazy? You can't turn that down. I said, no, I haven't turned it down. I just didn't think it was for me. Anyway, they came back and said, no, it's definitely for you. And after it finally sunk in, I was made up, and especially when I think what was important to me was the university is obviously, quite prestigious, which is great. Or to get one from any university is great, but University of Liverpool, great. And the fact that it was for music, which is great, because that's what I've dedicated although people always hear me on the Anfield Wrap, that's my... Yeah. I mean, there were some people on LinkedIn that were kind of writing, oh my God, I didn't even know you did this. I only hear you on the Anfield.
Maybe we haven't talked about it well enough, all the stuff you do with OEA. I always think that. You think you've told people enough. If people sometimes say, oh, you're banging on about this, the number of people I bump into who don't know things that we think, and I'm sure you find the same thing doing OEA, you think you've told them 100 times and it transpires you haven't.
Yeah. So, I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, I've been working at Africa Oye since 1999 when I moved to Liverpool. Started off as a small series of gigs in the city centre, started as a trainee and kind of just worked my way up to become the director of the organisation in 2013, which I've been doing ever since, and the festival's grown, and obviously it helps getting... I was thinking to myself, please don't let me get that degree, and then it rains for 2 days, and completely just makes the festival a downer, but it just so happened that it was the only two, still to date, the only two hot days, hot weekend in Liverpool this summer, and they landed for Oye, which was fantastic, which meant that it was absolutely heaving, it was amazing, and yeah.
It's, for me, what's fascinating is that, firstly, you mentioned getting the degree from a prestigious university, which it is, but let's be clear about this, it's also the University of Liverpool. You've made Liverpool your home. When you talk about this, your commitment to the festival, this is... It is. I'm saying it is a civic award and a civic achievement. It isn't just the idea of an honorary degree for music, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, sort of plonked at the door of Elton John or something like that. The point about this is, you came to Liverpool, you say it there in 1999. You've been here ever since. You've got a family here. It's been your life. For the reason why we know each other is through the Anfield Wrap, because you've come and contributed to that. You contribute to so many things. The city's yours, and that's what the degree is also signifying.
Yeah, and to hear that when there's so many, the pomp and pageantry, it just completely threw me. I had to go for it felt like a royal wedding the way that I was walking in. It was so I wouldn't say archaic because that might sound disrespectful, but traditional. Yeah. And I kind of liked it, but I
love the picture of you in your robes.
Yeah. So yeah, and I even had a blue suit that went with the colour of the robes and everything, the blue and red. So yeah, it was nice. It was lovely to have my family there, and what was also nice as well was I had to almost give an inspirational speech to the real graduates. The graduates, the young people that had graduated, and that seemed to go down really well because I was talking about all the experiences that I had and sort of putting the point across that even though they've just graduated, if they don't know what they want to do, don't look at that as a bad thing, because you almost get pigeonholed and people will say, what do you want to be? You need to know what you want to do. I had no idea what I wanted to do until I was 30 years old. And I think, putting things across to people like, just be nice to people. You don't realise how much doors will open for you just by being nice to people. Listen to everybody that wants to meet with you, well, within reason. But, if there's a reason to meet somebody, you never know what might come out of that meeting, Just like all little things like that don't cost anything to sort of acquire those sort of points I wanted to put across, because that's how I got to where I am today.
And as part of it now, you've got that sits there and always will. But the thing I know from when you come in and do stuff with us is it doesn't stop. OEA's all year round. I mean, it's not this stuff. You don't get, there's quieter times and busier times, don't get me wrong, but you're working every single day on OEA. You're working on it now for next year. You're working on the wider programme. You're working on all the material that OEA does. People might think it is just 2 days in June, but it isn't. It's so much more than that. But also just those 2 days in June, so much goes into it, and you're working away at it now.
Mate, I will tell you the truth, I have not had a day off since the festival. All I've been doing is fundraising, looking for sponsorship opportunities, trying to strike while iron's hot. And then I want people to feel sorry for me. It's my choice. I can have time off whenever I like. I'm the boss. But, the way I see it is, we don't stop. We've got to keep going, got to keep fighting. And you got to remember, OEA's free.
Yeah.
It's so difficult to, when I first started, the festival cost about 50k to produce. It's now costing £500,000.
Yeah.
Production costs go up every year, visas, blah, 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 blah. So it's a difficult animal to control. And, it's one of those that we're almost like a victim of our success. And we have to keep, fighting to obviously keep the festival free and just to keep the festival going.
So now you've got this, you had the full day, you really, really enjoyed it. Is there a part of you that wonders about going and, maybe not now, but in a few years, going and doing something? Like, what I mean by that, doing a master's, doing something, you know what I mean, with your experiences? Or even doing a little bit, you enjoyed doing the lecturing, you thought about doing a little bit of lecturing?
Definitely some lecturing. Yeah. I think the uni have already asked me to do, I've done a couple of lectures along with Dave McTague, around festivals and marketing and stuff like that. I'm going to do some more of those at the uni. And then I want to kind of take that on the road and do that around the country and try and inspire young people all around the country, really, to tell them about the opportunities that they can have in the events industry, not just in festivals, but the events industry,
Great. Yeah, so all that to come. I like the idea of a road show. When it came out, we were honestly all delighted at the Anfield Wrap. We were absolutely pleased. Obviously, there was all the jokes as well, because it's us and that's the way in which it goes. They made him a doctor, for God's sake, as though he's going to walk around with a stethoscope on top of everything else. But it's the business. We're all so proud of him. It's Paul Duhaney. Great stuff there from Paul. A pleasure to work with him across 5 or 6 years, and what he does with OEA is the absolute business. Very, very proud of him. Delighted he got that. I've got a book coming out on the 26th of September. It's about the previous manager. It's called Transformer. It's not at all nostalgic. Quite the opposite. It's an argument against nostalgia. I want that borne in mind as we go all the way through, and it's about how football's a series of building blocks both on and off the pitch. I want you to buy it. I'm not shy about this. I keep trying to work out precisely why I'm so determined, other than the obvious reason why I want people to buy it. I think it's mostly for the needle, and I think it's also because we do our thing up here in the northwest of England, and we crack on in a number of different unlikely ways. And I just quite like the idea that a Waterstones in Loughborough has got to put our book at number 1. I genuinely do think I like that idea more than anything else. So if you could help with that, buy it on hardback. We're sending lots of emails about it on all the social media platforms, other ways to do it if you're in the UK and outside the UK. If you're in the UK, please do buy it through the UK channels, and we'll find out a way to get them all signed at some point. If you're outside the UK, there is a link going around that you can buy it from sooner rather than later. If not, you'll have to wait until December in a couple of territories for it and go from there. And we've got live shows about this as well, which is part interview about the book and then an Anfield Wrap live show on Monday the 23rd. We're in Edinburgh at a venue that I think is called Malone's, and I've forgotten to write it down before this, so I apologise. Jordan says yes. Jordan's carrying my memory for me. The EFL at the time of recording this show is still not confirmed when the fucking hell we're playing West Ham. So on whatever night in London we're not playing West Ham, I'm playing West Ham and Liverpool, I hasten to add. So Tuesday or Wednesday we'll be playing West Ham. On the one that isn't when we play West Ham, we'll be doing an event in London. Honestly, Shaun, you imagine what the promoter's like with me at this point. The promoter wants me dead. Why can't you just tell me a date? Well, have you heard of Rick Parry?
That's clash with Milan at the minute, isn't it?
No. The West Ham. No, the issue is the Milan game will definitely be the week before, but they didn't confirm all the UEFA games until Sunday. Right, okay. So I think the EFL are quite reasonably. Sorry, Rick. The EFL. I know he listens. And he's gesturing at me. I know he listens. Are you, Rick? I hope you're well. So the EFL have quite reasonably waited for UEFA, but UEFA didn't confirm Conference League games until yesterday. So I think that hopefully by close of play today we will actually have a date. So we will be in London, central London. I'll confirm the venue and everything when it is done. But it'll be Tuesday or Wednesday that week. Then Thursday we're in Liverpool and Beer Kelly. You can buy tickets for that. And then on Friday we're in Lavery's Comedy Club in Belfast on Friday the 27th. That's the way that's going, and we're going from there. Anyway, I want to talk about the defenders and the goalkeeper, Ian, before we get on to the messes that have knocked around this weekend. There's tons in the Trent goal, and it's a shame to lose it, but no harm done. I think Trent tried to force it a few times. He's otherwise great, but I just love that triangle at the back. When Konate's on it, and I feel he has a tough trot last season, Konate. When Konate is on it, he is the perfect footballer on the planet to play next to Virgil van Dijk.
Yeah, and he currently looks absolutely imperious, doesn't he? He's doing what he was good at when he first came in, and that's like winning his individual battles, but he's also carrying the ball further up the pitch. He's kind of becoming a hybrid Matip at the moment. He's the last player on earth I thought you'd see carrying the ball to a halfway line, but it's happening quite a bit. And he's covering for Trent when Trent goes forward. There's that understanding. He's had that year of being next to Trent when Trent's moving inside and had little struggles, but at the moment it just looks so fluid. It just looks like there's an understanding, and I think it was summed up in the post-match interview by Robbo. Robbo's first thing was, when they were asking what you're doing differently, well, we're defending better. And it's such a nebulous concept to defend better. There's obviously a lot of technical stuff going on there, but Trent has got the same freedom he had when he first moved into that hybrid right back going into midfield. That's not changed, but it just appears that he's using it as everything, a more calm, more measured way. There's an understanding of responsibility of the role, and everything seems, again, only 3 games in, but it seems seamless at the moment. And the relationship between the 5 of them, I was thinking this in the car on the way in, the idea that Quansah is now third choice, whereas 3-4 weeks ago we thought he was automatically second choice and he'd be our starting centre back next to Virgil. He's dropped back to third choice, and I think that's a brilliant position to be in. The fact we're not even talking about Gomez, and he's clearly our 4th choice central defender, because there are literally no others anymore. It's a great place to be in. We look really good, and just praying that this new form, this new system, this idea of resting within certain games is going to maintain the fitness of all of them, so we don't need to call anybody beyond those 4.
Let's be clear on the defending well aspect, Shaun. In 21-22, Liverpool conceded 26 league goals. In 19-20, Liverpool conceded 33, but by game 29, when the pandemic hits and it's all done and dusted, Liverpool have only conceded 21. At that point, 8 games to go, and if they continue to concede at that rate, they concede about 26 league goals. In 18-19, Liverpool conceded 22 league goals. The point about this is, Liverpool, in recent living memory, these players have all been part of a cohesive defensive unit. They know what it's about, they know what it entails. And I think that's one of the reasons why, as it does sort of close, solid performances make a ton of sense to them. Virgil van Dijk's quite happy to be a solid centre-half. He just happens to also simultaneously be the best one.
Yeah, 100%. And I think what is probably overlooked a little bit is that they didn't play much together at all last season. So that back 5, that's the back 5 that starts the Champions League final in Paris, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly how many times they started together last season, but I don't think it was many.
But Robbo's out for a long stretch, isn't he? Gomez plays both full backs.
And Trent only gets 28 games, you know.
And even then when they do come back, they're all coming back at different times and they're not quite in the right rhythm and stuff. So, it is clear from the numbers that you've just, sort of showed us that this is a solid defence. If you can keep them fit and they can play in the right sort of rhythm, in the right sort of style. And I mean, that was always the bedrock of Klopp's success. The attackers get all applauded, and rightly so, but it was always on the foundation of a solid defence. And I think because of injuries, because of different players not being, fit at certain points. That was when we lost a little bit under Klopp. So it's when he first comes in, we don't really have the solid defence because he's picking up other people's players, and we have the sort of crazy Klopp mad football where it's just sort of back to front, and we beat you on emotion, or we beat you on great attack and play. Then we sort the defence out, and in that period where sort of 2, 3, 4 years where we're just absolutely solid, win everything that we can possibly win, and then you have sort of the injuries or maybe certain players moving on or whatever, and the defence isn't quite where it is. So we still have all the attacking quality, but we don't want to have the solid defence. And I think if that is the key. If Robbo's already saying that we're defending better, that's a really exciting thing for me, because the attacking stuff is there for all to see, but the defence is where you win your trophies essentially.
It's where this team wins its trophies, because it isn't a problem that needs solving, Ian, if you see what I mean. Like, even last season, it wasn't a problem that needed solving. There were so many games where they were having to score 2 because they'd conceded one daft one, often quite early. That's not happening at the minute. As I say, they could have conceded yesterday, a couple of good saves from the goalkeeper, so it's not, it's important not to get too carried away on that, but you can't argue with what you've seen so far. It is 3 clean sheets, and it's just 3 series of performances where, with the exception of Quanta first half, you're giving everyone 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, maybe even 9 out of 10.
Yeah, wouldn't disagree. I mean, he mentioned before about, when was the last time they got 3 clean sheets in a row? I've not checked this, but in terms of last season, how long did it take them to get 3 clean sheets? I'm going to say maybe September, October till he got 3 clean sheets, something like that.
There was a stat after the Brentford game that was the first time we'd had 2 wins with clean sheets in about 14 months.
So
I've not checked that stat. It could be bollocks.
To go and get 3 clean sheets, I think what that does, that gets you incredible buy-in as well. So any doubters in the kind of changing room and stuff who are maybe thinking, well, hang on, this is all going to be a bit new. What's it going to be like? All of a sudden, you've got a back 5 there, and it'll be all of them because no one wants to concede goals, but especially the back 5. You can imagine them now where it's just like, same again, boys, we don't concede again. If you get through Forest, then it's Bournemouth, and all of a sudden, maybe you are kind of 4 or 5 games in, not really conceding a goal. Psychologically, what does that do for you, but also for the opponents as well? All of a sudden, you see it against Brentford, don't you, where Brian Mbemo, who I think is a very good footballer, just doesn't fancy the challenge of taking on Virgil van Dijk. But
Bangs a brace this weekend.
He's back to his best again, scores 2. So yeah, it's one of them. But I think Virgil's kind of almost, this thing that hangs around him, his presence, it's still there, it still exists. I think people still look at him and think he's an unbelievable footballer. If you can, you stay away from him. But they've all talked about this thing of not conceding goals. It's clearly kind of got them kind of excited. And for it, Robbo references it again post-match yesterday. Back 5s, they don't want to concede goals. They want to keep it tight. Yes, last season you mentioned it there, Neil. Going behind what seemingly felt like every game, you were up against it. And yes, the forwards at times, you wanted them to kind of perform to their XG and do a little bit better in big moments. The Old Trafford thing will get referenced, but they still go to Old Trafford last year and still score goals, more than 1 goal on 2 occasions, and yet don't win either game because they're shipping so many at the back. And listen, it's a balancing act. You want both ends of the pitch to be performing well. But all the signs at the minute look like Liverpool are a cohesive unit, and all the parts, top end of the pitch, middle of the park, the defence and the goalkeeper, it all seems to be working well.
I think just very quickly, I think what we've seen with this team is that, like, certainly defensively, they are a team of habits. So back 4, like, clean sheets become a habit. You get a clean sheet and all of a sudden it becomes a habit, just like conceding goals first did last year, because one goes and you go, it's happened again, and then it doesn't feel as bad as it does. So if you build up a number of clean sheets, 1 goal against you feels like the worst thing in the world. When you're doing it every week, it's just sort of like, oh, it's happened again. Doesn't really matter. And I think that's been clear. I remember, watching games when in probably Alisson's first or second season, and we conceded our first goal at Anfield in probably 20 years or something, or what. That's what it felt like at the time. And he's fuming. He's absolutely livid. And I think we lost a little bit of that last season, albeit, he was missing for part of the season. But I think that's an important point.
Indeed. Listen, I wanted to do more in the wider picture, but we're short of time. But it would be remiss, Shaun, if we didn't at least briefly mention the Blues. It was, I mean, in the round, the underlying numbers are still quite kind to them, and they have been for the period they were last season. In the way that the underlying numbers are not kind to Manchester United, but the underlying bleakness is the XB is off the charts at the minute. Goodison, the statisticians have never seen the like. It was something to behold on Saturday when it goes 3-2.
it's quite something when winning 3-0 at Old Trafford is not the best thing to happen this weekend from a footballing point of view. Yeah, I mean, obviously that's a joke, but I think George will clip that. It's I
They
mean,
take that stuff really well, by the way. Honestly, you'll be fine as well. You'll be fine.
Do you see the humour in it, Shaun?
Yeah.
Good clue.
as I'm sure they don't. But I mean, it is unbelievable, isn't it? It is unbelievable. I mean, just when you think they can't get more Everton, they always surprise you. That's the great thing about them. They always surprise you. Like I was, I ended up at a barbecue on Saturday, and it was full of Reds really, and then the Blues started to turn up after the game.
Oh God!
And luckily,
fair play to them, by the way.
Fair play to them. Yeah, I mean, in fairness, there was only one, so I mean, like fair play to him. But you can still sort of have a joke with them, but you can tell they've just completely given up. And I think that is if I was at Everton at the moment, that's what I'd be most nervous about, because it feels like they get the fight, and then as soon as something goes wrong, it just completely falls apart. But yeah, quite enjoyable for us.
Can I just throw the other side in for a second?
As a man who's married to an Evertonian
and whose son is a Gladys Street season ticket holder, I had to pick our Matty up from the game on Saturday.
Oh God!
I dropped him off at the game. I had to pick him up from the game, and as I turned into the road off County Road, where generally I pick him up, I was a little bit early, so it was still 2-0. So I heard the first goal go in, and then the second goal go in. I was watching people leave and walking past me from the ground who had left on 86 and had left a 2-0 win, looking at their phones. I was then watching as it came to 2-1, then 2-2, and suddenly they'd left what had become a draw, and then the third went in, and I'm sat parked up listening to the third go in, and genuinely, I'm heartbroken for our Matty, because he's there and he's watched this happen. And 2-0, I'm listening to Alan Stubbs on the radio talk about how good the game's been, how good Ndiaye's been, how good.
Looked like they played well on Match of the Day.
They looked like
watched
they played
it back 3 or 4
really
times.
well.
It looked really good.
Only 3 or 4.
Ndiaye looks like a footballer. Iraboam looks like a footballer. It looks like they bought intelligently. But then that happens to them again, and you can't feel anything but doomed. And the only thing that lifted our Matty's day was he'd got Oasis tickets at lunchtime in the car on the way to the match. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what I will say is, like, my mate who did turn up said it was the best football they've played in years. Like, for 40 minutes, they played really well. So maybe they're not down and out, but he just said there was just inevitability of the worst happening.
They're talking about the subs being obvious. And I think there's, watching the highlights, they've got to have a conversation about their goalie.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, you all right with it?
I had a great weekend. Yeah, I loved it. When it goes 1, you'd think there's every chance it goes 2, but when it goes 2, there is that inevitability where you think this is going to go 3. It is going to go 3. Bournemouth smelled blood, and listen, I think the goalkeeper has more often than not been their best player. But then, there is that clip of him. I think he's laughing at 2-0, and all of a sudden his shirt over his head at 3-2. I thought it was glorious. What a weekend.
There we go. That'll do us. It is the Anfield Wrap. It is a pleasure to be with you all the way through. Anything that you need from Liverpool, you're going to get across the course of this week. Honestly, I've seen the schedule. It's fucking great. So do subscribe. If you're not already subscribed, do most definitely subscribe. It will be an absolute pleasure. I don't know how anyone else feels, but you never know, boys. This is the one.